Hello and welcome to the summary of the second week of the Sabres Blood Bowl League. This is the first recorded summary, and I am joined today by TimH, the coach of the Undermountain Giants, who was...
Hello!
Hello, Tim. You were obviously the creator of the first week's summary, so I figured it appropriate to have you on.
Yeah,
Right.
It's been an interesting week.
Indeed it has, so I suppose we should get on to it. Let's see what the matches were, for those who could not be bothered to watch hour-long videos on them. Right, the first match was... Well, it's not the first match, but on the rankings, the first list is Pandemonium's Sarah's Angels versus the Asians' Hexaratl Heroes. Unfortunately, we do not have a recording for this one, because Pandemonium has requested that we don't record any matches.
Oh.
Which is unfortunate, but it's their right not to be recorded if they're too nervous or don't want to. I obviously played Pandemonium in the first round, so unfortunately it appears she had about as much luck again, with the Hexaratl Heroes winning 1-0. So unfortunately, 2 losses to Sarah's Angels. So the next up...
The Lizardmen aren't a nice matchup. Strength 4, dodgy skinks, fast movement on everyone. They're a tough team.
I hate skinks so much. I could handle the bloody sauruses, but not the skinks as well. So, speaking of fishermen, the second match also has a fisherman team. I wonder why there's 2 fisherman teams. Who knows? Was the Hungry Fish, Smiling Jacks, versus the Heritors, the Awakened. This was a recorded match, of course, and was actually the best match I'd seen. Both teams played fantastically, and...
Everyone played fantastically, yes.
And it wasn't horribly marred by one team getting a ridiculous amount of bad luck, which seems to be a tradition in Blood Bowl.
Well, again, we see the Lizardmen came out on top. Part of why they are going to do very well this tournament is the main teams that I feel, having played Lizardmen in the past, are good against the Lizardmen, are really dodgy teams like the the Wood Elves, and also the Skaven, because they can outmaneuver, they're even faster than the Skinks. They can play the Lizardmen at their own game.
Yeah. Well, that's... Unfortunately, as you say, none of those teams are here today.
We do, however, have some other teams that I think could take them. The Vampires, pretty decent matchup for the Lizardmen because you've got Strength 4 to counteract the enemy's Strength 4, but unlike the Saurus, you can actually dodge away. The Norse and Dwarves both have block pretty much on everyone, which is a very nice way of getting around the fact that the Lizardmen are Strength 4 because, well, they may be Strength 4, but they don't have block, which means...
They don't have any ability.
They don't have any abilities, which means they will go down. Eventually.
Yes, that is one of the terrifying things about the 2 Norse teams.
One Norse team.
The Norse team and the Dwarf team, sorry. I'm calling you Norse now.
Oh dear.
Sorry about that.
The Nurgle team as well, that has the Strength 4 Warriors. The Pestigors are actually Strength 4 when they do a Blitz action. And they've also got a Beast of Nurgle already, which is Strength 5.
Yeah, so obviously it's not like the Lizardmen are so overpowered that no other team except Wood Elves and Skaven can beat them.
No, there are some other teams here that should be able to put up a decent fight against it.
So yes, that, as mentioned, ended with the Lizardmen team winning 3-1. This is Smiling Jack's second victory, and unfortunately the Heritors' second loss. Next up, it was the Lustrious Sabres, owned by the Lord God, versus Perpetual Noobs Plague Spore Seekers, Amazon versus Nurgle. I have to admit, even though we didn't get to record this one due to a Steam error, which didn't tell me that I was messaged so I couldn't record the match in time, I'm not entirely surprised by the result here.
I watched this one actually. It was a pretty bloody match. Not much in the way of permanent injuries, but the Nurgle team used its superior strength and the fact that the Amazon team was down a couple of players to just beat up the Amazons who were present and then score the touchdowns once there wasn't really much in the way of defences left.
It is a case where the Amazon teams are being horrifically injured every game.
There was some good plays by the Amazons that game, though they had some pretty near touchdowns, managing to dodge out of the enemy's tackle zones. But ultimately, the player disadvantage by that time meant that the Nurgle team managed to take the win 2-0.
Yes, so that's that match. Next match. This was my match for the Overlorders versus Von Carstein's Vanquishers, which were owned by El Ariok. I'm still not sure how to pronounce that. I'm assuming that's right.
He had some bad luck.
He really did. I honestly felt like I shouldn't win. Shouldn't have won that.
Well, you played a solid game. All the games I saw, everyone was playing pretty solid Blood Bowl. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this team has not had any luck so far.
Oh no! They seem to get injured in the first turn, don't they?
Well, yes. they really shouldn't be. In fact, if you look at all the permanent injuries, with the exception of the vampire who died, all the permanent injuries have been inflicted on people with armor value 7. So that's Amazons, Norsemen, and Skinks. Also
not my catchers. Not yet.
Also the Thrall on the vampire teams, all armor value 7, and you're probably going to be seeing this a lot over the course of the next couple of weeks. It's those armor value 7 players, especially the Skinks with their stunty, that suffer the permanent injuries.
Yeah, that's obviously going to... Well, that's obviously the trade-off, because we're looking at all those people, well, except the Thralls, are sort of dodgers. They are harder to hit, they're meant to not be attacked, basically.
I'd say the Norse team are meant to be the exception there. They're not a particularly dodgy team. They've got the block to help them, but unfortunately, if you can get the 2 dice blocks against them, you can start getting the knocked down and the defender stumbles results.
But this was, of course, the only matchup which 2 teams who won in their first round played each other. Now, this is unfortunate for me, as you'll find out later on when we go on to next week's matchups, for a different reason. Anyway, yes, on to the final match. It was yourself, your Undermounted Giants, Tim, against Sam's the Fighting Fifths.
Yes, the Fifths played a very good game. I will point out now, the interception by the Dwarf, that wasn't anything on my half. That wasn't anything I'd done. The player who caught the ball, whilst he is my best ball carrier, he had no skills that should have been helping him. It is just the case that when you do a pass, there's always a 1 in 6 chance that an intercepting player will catch it. And I got lucky on that interception.
Yes, of course, just to clarify the rules, interceptions can only be done if you are in the path of the ball and are closer to the passing character than the catching character.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that passing character, if I remember correctly, was surrounded by a gaggle of dwarves.
Well, he could have attempted the dodge out, but then he'd have to move round to another angle, and there still would have probably been dwarves who could have attempted the interception. So instead of going through a dodge roll, a pass roll, and a catch roll, he went for the dodge roll on a slight penalty.
Pass roll.
No, I mean the pass roll, yes, on a slight penalty, which I think was probably the right play to make.
Yes, I have to admit, watching Sam play, I can't fault any of his decisions in that match, really.
He got a bit unlucky with his Yeti, whereas you got incredibly lucky with your Ogre. Admittedly, the Ogre is a lot more reliable than the Yeti.
Yes, that is true, but only if he's not trying to attack with the Yeti. The Yeti is as reliable as my Ogre if he's attacking.
The plan when facing such players like the Yeti, and I believe the Yeti is going to be the only player in this tournament with Wild Animal. I don't think any of the other teams get that. No. But when fighting the Yeti, what I definitely try to do is just keep trying to make sure that it's on the ground. Then if it wants to stand up reliably, it has to attempt the blitz action. That's the only way it can reliably stand up.
Additionally, I have to say, from the 5 matches, you are the team, along with the Plague Spore Seekers, which is really just my fear of their team, then seeing them in action. You and them are the teams I feel are the ones to beat here.
So, just looking through the numbers, I'd say both the Lizardmen teams are also in similar positions. What is emerging, amusingly though, from what I hear from the players, not intentionally, is that we see the Hexotal heroes are playing an incredibly bashy, violent game, whereas the Hungry Fish seem to be doing a lot more ball handling, a lot more running with the skinks. So we are going to be seeing later that I think the skill points for the heroes are going onto their Saurus, whereas the skill points for the fish are going onto their skinks. So they're going to play very differently.
Actually, as it looks like it, we have a Lizardman matchup in week 4. I will look forward to that one.
Same here.
If those are so different, right. So that's the matches that occurred this week, which leaves the rankings as they stand. There are 4 teams on 2 wins. The Hungry Fish, the Plague Spore Seekers, the Overlorders, and the Undermountain Giants. So, there are additionally, the next 2 teams are both on 1 win and 1 loss, which are the Hexoatl Heroes and Von Carstein's Vanquishers. And the bottom 4, all on 2 losses, Serra's Angels, the Awakened, the Fighting Fifths, and the Lustrious Sabres.
Yeah.
Of course, it is definitely, I feel I have to keep mentioning this. This is week 2. We have 9 matches to play in total. This could change.
It's still all to play for.
It's still all to play for.
I'd also like to point out right now that it's not that the game system doesn't intentionally try airing up people who won their first games with people who lost their first games, because the entire schedule of games is already pre-written. There is going to be no sort of ranking systems where it tries picking high-seeded players against low-seeded or high-seeded versus high-seeded, nothing like that. We have no control over who plays who.
Yeah, it's very true. The fact that a lot of teams lost, a lot of it was obviously, as you mentioned, paired up against winning teams versus losing teams, is just a random chance.
Yeah.
We're not being mean to them. It does make the rankings as it stands look rather unbalanced, but as mentioned, it's still early on. This is not a fight between the top 4 or 6 by any measure.
I mean, hang on, let's have a quick look. Yeah, okay.
So that's as it stands. Expect it to change dramatically, as I don't think we're going to have another matchup where it's winners versus losers again. I think it's going to be a much more mixed bag next week. We'll get onto that later, though. So, next up, I want to get on to the changes in the Hall of Fame. This is similar to the rankings in that this is going to change dramatically. But one of the things I do want to mention here is Gloin.
He does prop up a lot. He does.
Gloin has decided that this week he wants to take most of the top spots for a while. Additionally, one of the big reasons I want to go here is the most experienced player is telling us how many level 2s we have, basically.
We have a lot of level 2s now. In fact, I don't believe they all fit onto this sheet.
Yes, I think they are just short of that. But we can see here, Gloin. Good lord, Gloin. 12 SPP.
4 more and he's level 3.
I know. Damn it, Gloin. And given that he is your chief scorer, that's fairly likely.
Actually, the reasoning behind this is that when I made my team, I only bought 1 runner, which means I've realistically only got 1 player who can reliably score touchdowns, or even handle the ball. Because of this, all my star player points are pretty much going on him. Now I've got a second runner with my winnings, and that's likely to change. Gloin won't be getting as many star player points.
Yes, I'm not surprised you went for a second runner. As I pointed out in your last match, having 1 runner is actually a significant weakness because he's the only dwarf without 9 armor.
Most teams it's not the case. Most teams you get about 4 or 5 players who are sort of your designated people who can do touchdowns. I mean,
in the case of humans, I have 2 throwers to pick up and run with the ball and catchers to receive or dodge.
But you also have your blitzers who have enough movement speed and also their defensive abilities that they can reliably score touchdowns as well.
Yeah, that's the big advantage of a human team, is almost everyone can carry the ball and sort of fill other roles.
Yeah.
But yes, it's a Mitzel. I made a mistake in my commentary of Smiling Jack. For some reason I thought he was running the Hexoatl Heroes. To my defense, one of his Sauruses had a very similar name to the Saurus, which actually was the big killer. So I just want to clarify that here. Is obviously
an understandable mistake.
Yes, lizardmen names are hard. But yes, we can see there's quite a vary. Most teams have a level 2 player. I think 3 teams have 2 level 2 players now?
Myself, the Plague Spore Seekers, your team, and I believe the Hungry Fish, but we can only see one of those on the most experienced players chart.
We will check that later. So, obviously, best scorer, Gloin again. Look at that man. He's scoring. Of course, he was the principal touchdown scorer. He's going to score, isn't he? Interesting that he didn't score in the first game, in some of the first game scores, because we've got Thorin and Bomber who scored as well.
Yes, I believe Bomber is the blitzer who scored in my first game. He also has agility 3, so he can do some ball play. Thorin, I believe, is the blocker who I did the pass to and who somehow managed to catch the ball.
Yes. For the most part, most teams are scoring only once with each player, with the notable exception being Gloin and my big hands, the Greater. But which is surprising when you've got it's not surprising when you've got a dedicated carrier on your team that you've got most of it. I'm a bit surprised that more of other teams don't, but then again, the Lizardmen have tons of skinks, the Vampires have many vampires. I'm not sure what the Plague Spore Seekers use, but...
The Plague Spore Seekers have 2 player types that I believe are both agility 3. That you've got your Rotters, which are the ones who have been doing the touchdowns. And then you have your Pestigors, who ideally you want to be doing the touchdowns because they're pretty much just better than the Rotters.
Yes, it does seem, actually, thinking about it, most of the other teams have a lot of ball carriers. Right, moving on. Best throw interceptor, Gloin, once again taking it. But he's the only interception so far. Not surprising.
They're not very common.
Interceptions are very hard. Passing on itself is hard and risky, so...
You very rarely want to attempt to pass over enemy players unless you have to. And even then, when you do the pass over the enemy players, there's very rarely anything less than a... Right. It's normally a 1 in 6 chance of...
The most violent team. The Hexoatl Heroes are by far the most violent in terms of injuries.
Horrifically violent team. I'll agree with you on that one.
I mean, the dwarves are blockers. They are violent, but look at those lizard men.
Yes, VI we see for the Plague Spore Seekers has also managed to inflict 2 casualties, but that's 6 casualties from 3 lizardmen. That's horrific. That's really bad. Really nasty.
There might even be more not on the list here, because of course there's a lot of 1 casualty inflictors at this point. I'm also unhappy to report Tom Tipsy McGee has slipped behind in the running side of things.
Oh dear, where is this?
Because Gloin, that greedy dwarf.
Yes, he has been running a lot.
Best thrower? I'm interested to see that the Serra's Angels are doing a lot of throwing.
Not too surprising. Like your own team, they have the pass and catch on their designated players.
I'm not surprised they're doing it. It's just that usually passes with an Amazon team, if done well, tend to result in scoring. So I can't help but feel this is really going on. We can't tell, obviously, since I'm not allowed to record the matches. Well, I don't see the matches.
Taking a guess, I'd probably say that the thing that's put a downer on the Amazon passing play is the Lizardmen. The Lizardmen have movement 6 on the Saws, I believe movement 8 on the Skinks. So even if you do get the pass and start running towards the touchdown zone, it's still very likely that a Lizardman will be able to blitz you. Or, as we saw, I believe, in the game between the Awakened and the Hexoatl Heroes, even if the Lizardmen are tied up, multiple Skinks can just run down from all over the pitch, surround a player, and then blitz them.
That was a terrifying thing to have to deal with. Obviously, the Survivor table means nothing.
The Survivor table is meaningless, though I will point out Gloin is number 1.
Why? Do they think he needs more? Why? Okay, best killer. Hexoatl Hero, still the only... That's odd. I thought there
have been 3 deaths inflicted so far.
Oh, one of them was knocked off the pitch.
Yes.
So it doesn't
People
count.
who've been ejected from the pitch, or I believe killed as a result of a foul, will not count towards these numbers.
And even though the death was inflicted by the tackle not being thrown off the pitch, it didn't matter. He was off the pitch, it didn't count.
No, that's not actually the case. As soon as you eject someone from the pitch, even if you had a result that will knock them down, you don't roll for armor.
Oh, so
Instead, you instantly roll for injury.
I apologise. Honestly, seriously, I have not played this game very long. I'm not sure
It's an
why I'm commentating.
understandable mistake to make, especially as the skull came up before the animations of the crowd appeared. It is slightly confusing.
But yes, so I'm still getting used to this. I am probably amongst the 3 least experienced players in the league.
I wouldn't know about
that. Hannah's at least the other one about as inexperienced as me. She's actually played the game off the computer, though.
Yes, she has. I wouldn't rule Hannah out. I've seen her make scary passing plays.
You've accidentally fallen into calling them by name here. Oh well. Sorry.
Can you edit that out later?
I could.
Okay. Moving on. Best receiver, we see Count Herman Rasputin has received twice. The
favourite vampire. Look at that name.
Yes.
Gloin is on the table as the
Gloin is on the table with a
receiver.
0 received.
Gloin, you're everywhere. Stop that. Right, so, well, that's the Hall of Fame done. Right, if there's anything of note here, I would like just to mention, there was the mention, of course, that 7 armor tends to cause injury. The Amazons continually suffer as a result of this.
Amazons and the Norse. Also, as I mentioned, the Skinks. All armor value 7.
But the teams of the Amazons tend to take beatings. And in the Sarah's Angels and Illustrious Sabres, let's just take a quick look at the Illustrious Sabres here. Wish this were quicker, but I believe this is the wrong team. They've already got a permanent injury on one of their line women, reducing their strength. They have 1 miss next game. This isn't actually so bad, but they are the Amazon team that got
game they just had. But they should be able to recover from this. They have enough players that they'll be able to field 12 players next match. They can definitely recover from these early injuries.
Yes. Plus, they already had a lot of players on the Amazon teams.
Yes.
A lot of early... Yes.
Something to bear in mind, though, a lot of the teams who do suffer permanent injuries, it does become the case that you might want to, if possible, fire that player and replace them if you can afford to.
The Sarah's Angels have taken a lot worse. They've got a reduced agility player who's missing the next game. They have a reduced move player due to the smash hit, which is terrible. Losing move is bad. A reduced strength from a smashed collarbone, missing the next game. And a damaged back, which means more likely to take injury.
There are, in fact, 2 different types of damaged niggling injury. You can get both niggling injuries, at which point you add 2 to subsequent injury rolls.
And when you do that, you might as well just accept they're going to die at some point.
Well, I believe I checked, actually, the likelihood of getting different injuries, if you want me to give you a quick rundown of those.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't know it. And
when you roll on the badly hurt type, when you suffer a badly hurt result, you roll a d6 and a d8. On a 1, 2, 3, then you basically get nothing. You're just badly hurt. On a 4, you miss your next game. On a 5, the d8 actually matters, and the d8 determines which type of stat you lose. And on a 6, you are dead. So whenever you suffer a badly hurt result, there's a 50% chance there's nothing permanent, but there's always a 1 in 6 chance that you will die.
And if you've got a +1, I think the +1 is on the 8, isn't it?
+1 is on the 8. I believe if it puts the 8 to a 9, that ups the value of the d6 to the next.
Well, so yes, while it does slightly affect the chance of death, but not as I thought it did. Okay, that's fine. As I say, when you played this on the computer only, you don't often understand the rules. Reading the rulebook is a must. So, that's the lineup. That's anything interesting to mention you've noticed about the teams, Tim?
Well, something I will point out, the Hexodal Heroes, whilst we see that they do have a lot of star player points coming on their Saurus as a result of those aforementioned injuries they've been inflicting.
All the injuries.
It's also worth noting that they have suffered an injury themselves on the skink Adho Higatek.
Strength 1!
He is now a strength 1 skink and is going to be a bit of a liability. The problem with him being strength 1 is most players in the game will now get 3 dice blocks against him.
Oh, that's very true.
Most players get...
Even a strength 2 player will get a 3 dice block
No,
against
strength
that.
2 will only get a 2 dice block. You need to be over double the other.
Oh. That explains a lot.
Yes,
Ignore me!
On your average skink, most players will get a 2 dice block against them. But thanks to dodge, it means even if you are getting a 2 dice block, it's going to be actually difficult for the other player to knock you down unless they have block. On a strength 1 skink, that's 3 dice results. They're starting to get much more likely to get that defender down result. I mean, if we think about the Norse team's Berserkers, that's block with frenzy. If he attempts to block this skink, he will effectively be rolling 6 dice and just needs a single one of those to come up as defender down or both down to take that skink out.
Norse team have suffered no injuries as of yet, but they also haven't levelled a single player.
Which team are we looking at now, then?
Fighting Fifths.
Fighting Fifths.
Which is... Yes, there are a couple of teams, I think, which don't have level 2s. Which isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world, it just means your SPP is a bit more spread out.
Something that is worth mentioning, I believe it is the Hungry Fish. Yes, have a look at the Hungry Fish's team for a minute.
Yep, just going.
And you will notice that Axel of Slanquapek, the skink, has rolled double 6 for his advancement. So he's now a strength 3 skink.
That is a very good move for...
It's very lucky, yes. But there is a downside to this. And that is, what's not made clear, is that when you're upgrading the value of your players, they become more valuable, which means teams who are lower value than you will get incentives against you.
There is a balancing mechanic here. It's just not come up very often because we've all had similar team values around the start. But yes, you can tell here, this skink has gone up by 50 points.
Yes, and this isn't just because he's level 2. It's actually the case that if you select a skill that is readily available to your player type, you increase his value by 20,000. If you roll a double for your skill and choose one of the skills that's not readily available, you increase it by 30,000. The stat increases increase it by significantly more. I think it's 40,000 for an extra point of armor, 50,000 for movement. I can't remember the specifics. But
please be aware, for people who don't quite understand, this is how much the cost of the player goes up, not necessarily the value.
Yes.
Although
this
they are related.
If you start getting the really good results, your players will become a lot more expensive, which means your team value will go up, and your opponents will actually get more incentives against you.
Yes. So, I think the Hungry Fish have had the best level up there. They might not have had the most, but they've got the best result on a level up, I believe.
Definitely. If you look at a lot of the teams, you'll find they've been taking block on their players. This is a solid choice.
Yeah, I did it for one of my catchers, which is one of the people who dodge through and run. So he's got dodge and block.
The blodge combo. You are only knocked down on a defender down result.
Only downside is they still have strength 2.
Yes. You will also probably see people taking dodge if they can. Sure hands is another good one. It makes it a lot easier to pick up the ball. The interesting one, if we look at the Plague Spore Seekers.
Okay, let's move quickly. Doop-de-doo, loading, there we go.
Well, they got a double on Ray and Mulder and a regular result on Matthews.
Oh, they have a leader.
Yes, these are 2 very good skills because they don't really benefit the individual player, they benefit the team. Leader gives you an additional reroll, which at this stage in the game is effectively equivalent to taking 100,000 winnings and spending them dirt cheap. And kick makes your kick a lot more accurate, which means it's a lot less likely that you're going to have those results where the ball ends up flying off the pitch and the enemy gets a touchback.
Actually, I've got to say, those are very good results to get.
Yes, they're both very solid skills. I believe kick is a general skill. They're the type of skills that people might want to think about taking on one player. There's no point in taking it on multiple players because you can only benefit from each one from a single player on your team.
I believe Kick is a regular skill because the rotter with Kick has only gone up to 60 value as opposed to 70 for the one with Leader.
Yes, I'm not sure whether rotters have. I believe they have general and they have mutations as their standard skills.
Right. So that's the roundup of what's happened.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the more important factor, what is coming up next? I mean, what do we have playing who this week? First listed match is the Fighting Fifths versus the Hexoatl Heroes, which is the second Lizardman team the Norse will play. But as you mentioned, they're a very different Lizardman team.
Well, technically, I believe both Lizardmen teams have almost identical team layouts. Both Lizardmen teams, I believe, have also earned enough money to potentially buy a Croxagore, which is the Lizardmen equivalent of, say, your Ogre on the human team or the Yeti on the Norse team.
Mm. Yes, so they will obviously have the big stompy guy to back up their big stompy guys. That seems unfair, really.
I believe they've earned enough money to buy one. It's up to them what they do.
Of course, we might see one team do it and the other not, which would further differentiate the teams.
Yes.
So yes, that matchup is of course the Hexoatl Heroes have won one game, the Fighting Fifths have won none. So certainly a different matchup.
Mm-hmm.
We'll hopefully start to see some differences between the teams now and make a more spread out board than clumps everywhere.
More importantly than the differences in win-loss ratios is the differences in values between the teams. Once you start getting larger differences between values, you'll see the fun incentives come up, like the Wizard, potentially, the Halfling Master Chef, those sorts of things.
Look forward to those. Second listed match is, of course, you and myself.
Yes, so it turns out your hit you put out on Gloin is for naught, as he will not be injured by the time we come to play.
Additionally, he's not alone now, is he?
He's not alone, no.
Well, I'm actually, as I mentioned, you are one of the teams I'm most nervous about playing with my team.
I'm looking forward to this game. I don't play against the human team very often. They're an interesting blend. You seem to have been playing them pretty solidly across the board. And you've got some nice options available to you thanks to your...
I have an Ogre with guard. My front line is terrifying now.
Well, you also have the movement speed. Movement speed 8 on your runner?
Oh yeah, and dodge as well. And block on one of them.
Well, that's double the movement speed of the average dwarf.
Yes. So it's obviously interesting. It's all about whether or not I can outmaneuver you, because no matter how much advantage my Ogre grants me, I can't rely on him to beat your entire team.
No.
So it's going to be an interesting match. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw me playing a bit like the Fighting Fifths there.
Who knows? We might be able to foul the Ogre that game as well.
Yeah, the Ogre might do well, the Ogre might do badly. That's the downside with big creatures. I've got a 1 in 6 chance of my Ogre deciding, you know what, I'm not doing anything this turn.
It is arguably the best result because the other ones are a 50-50 chance of them doing nothing unless they're doing their specialist area. The downside of Bonehead over, say, Wild Animal is if you fail your Bonehead test, you lose your tackle zones.
Yes.
With Wild Animal, that's not the case because even if it's not doing what you want it to do, it's still more than happy to punch people who are running away from it.
Whereas my Ogre is just stupid.
He's just stupid.
So that's probably going to be the first match recorded, since I think we're going to be doing that immediately after this.
Fair enough.
Right, okay, next match is the Plague Spore Seekers. Oh, also, sorry, I was going to mention something. Remember how I mentioned that in the second round I had to play a team that had won the first game? In the third round, I also have to play another team that, like me, has won the first 2 games. This is a fairly interesting build-up for me, because it looks like, as I mentioned, early on statistically this means nothing, because that was going to happen. It could happen very easily and means nothing. But, from one perspective, it looks like I'm running against walls here. Which I find amusing. But anyway, yes, Perpetual Noobs, Plague Spore Seekers versus the Von Carstein Vanquishers.
Hopefully the Vanquishers will get some better luck this game.
Unfortunately,
Their first 2 games have been a bit unfortunate with the dice rolls for them.
But the Plague Spore Seekers are another hitty team, so I am looking forward to seeing whether or not I get to see another first turn injury.
Yes, it is unfortunate for the Vanquishers that they have to go up against the Seekers. The Seekers are one of the highest value teams at the moment. They have 2 skills, as we mentioned before. There's just nothing's letting up for them, unfortunately. I wish them the best of luck. I hope they get some better dice rolls than they had in their previous games.
And their next matchups will hopefully be nicer. Next up, we have the Heritors Awaken versus the Lord God's Lustrous Sabres. This is actually guaranteeing one of those teams 1 win.
Unless it's a draw.
Unless it's a draw. But either way, one of these teams will not have an all-losing streak. Unfortunately, this means the other will.
Unless it's a draw.
Unless it's a draw. Stop mentioning a draw in Blood Bowl.
They happen. It's in fact surprising how often they happen. Certain team matchups you will just find the receiving team will get the ball and then just score a bit. But
Here we obviously have a dodgy Amazon team. They're like the opposite of the fifth, but the Norse teams really, in that the Norse teams all have block, the Amazon teams all have dodge.
Yes. The Undead, on the other hand, are pretty unique in that they've got a really wide variety of players. And I don't just mean wide in that they've got a similar stat line, then one guy has catch, one guy has block. It's not like that.
They have frenzy, they have regeneration, they
have dodge, they have block with decent movement speed on the white. There's a lot of variety.
Yes, they are a very interesting team to watch play. I really want the werewolves to do more damage. I love werewolves. But
yeah.
And the final matchup, this will obviously not be recorded.
Oh well.
As per, this is entirely fair. As mentioned, Panda here is one of the least experienced players in the league. I can understand it. When I played in the first round against their team, they were really distressed to find out how many people were spectating.
Fair enough. But that is the Amazons versus the Lizardmen.
Another Lizardmen Amazon matchup. This is the second for Pandemonium in a row.
It's not exactly unexpected, though, seeing as we have 2 Amazon teams and 2 Lizardmen teams. The Lustrian teams are making up the bulk of the tournament.
Yes, that's true. So, that's what we have to look forward to next week. And hopefully they will be as entertaining as previous ones. I'm quite happy with how the league has been going so far. So, alright, I think that's everything we need to talk about. So, thanks for joining me, Tim.
You're welcome.
I need people like you to actually explain what the hell is going on.
That's fine, always happy to help.
we shall see. I'm planning... This is obviously a call out to all the other players. I would like to see other people come on and give me their opinions of the games. So if anyone is interested, please do message me. And I'll try and fit you in. If not, I think I might have Tim on as the expert whenever I can.
Yeah.
Because I trust you on that. So, and I hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you next week. Or if you indeed do go through the tedious task of watching every single match. It's not tedious. I love it. Seriously, it's one of the most fun things I do, and I don't know why. But,
nothing like a good old bit of violence and ball passing.
It's like... This isn't sport. This is not sport. This is just war. War. So, I'll thank you for joining us, and I shall see you next week, or as mentioned, or in the games. I've been Overlord59. That has been TimH.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.